Jake's screen went black, every video erased, every word silenced overnight. His loyal viewers vanished into digital oblivion, and Streamflix offered nothing but cold silence. Who wanted his truth buried, and why was his voice suddenly dangerous? But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Jake Carter stared at the cold, impersonal email glowing on his laptop screen as if it had punched him in the gut. Account suspended due to violation of community guidelines. No details, no specifics, no opportunity to appeal, just a blunt erasure of years of his work and the countless voices he had amplified. For Jake, a man who had traded bullets for microphones, it wasn't just a platform shutting down a channel, it was an attempt to erase truth. His morning had started like any other, coffee brewed, camera set up, notes reviewed for the next live stream. But now, the silence in the wake of his disappearance felt deafening. His followers, veterans wrestling with PTSD, young soldiers looking for hope, and civilians hungry for honest dialogue, suddenly, they had no place to turn. Jake had built a sanctuary online, a rare space where pain was acknowledged and healing began. Now, that sanctuary was sealed off without explanation. A cold fury settled over him, sharp and unyielding. Streamflix was a corporate giant, faceless and indifferent, but their decision had ripped a hole through his life's work. How could a platform that touted community support shut down a veteran's voice without cause? Jake's military instinct kicked in. This wasn't random. It was a strategic strike. His gut told him there was more beneath the surface, some unseen hand pulling strings in the shadows. He scrolled through the void where his channel used to be, blank, inaccessible, like a ghost erased from memory. The interviews with fellow veterans who had poured their souls into those sessions, the live Q&As where people shared breakthroughs and breakdowns alike, all gone. Jake's storytelling wasn't entertainment fluff. It was real, raw, and sometimes uncomfortable, but never hateful, never malicious. If anything, he had been careful to respect the sensitivity of his audience. Yet here he was, censored. Jake's phone buzzed relentlessly. Messages from friends, supporters, strangers demanding answers, rallying in his defense. Social media exploded with hashtags, #HatFree, Jake Carter, #Veterans Voices Matter. The sudden surge of public support only deepened his conviction. This wasn't just a personal loss, it was a warning sign, a battle line drawn in the shifting digital landscape where voices like his were increasingly silenced. What was the motive? Was it political, financial, or something else entirely? Jake remembered how, just days ago, a slick advertisement had appeared during his live streams, an unfamiliar company claiming exclusive rights to veteran content on the very same platform. The timing was too coincidental to ignore. It gnawed at him, feeding a suspicion that this suspension was not about community standards but about control. Someone wanted his channel off the air, and they were powerful enough to make it happen overnight. That night, as Jake sat in the quiet of his small apartment, the weight of loss threatened to crush him. But buried beneath the anger and confusion was a spark, a fierce determination to fight back, to reclaim his voice and protect the stories that mattered. The truth was his weapon, and silence was not an option. He opened his laptop again, fingers poised to dig deeper, to unravel the tangled threads behind the suspension. Streamflix might have tried to erase Jake Carter, but he was far from defeated. Every click, every search was a step toward exposing the unseen forces behind the blackout. For Jake, this was no longer just about a streaming account. It was a battle for the respect and dignity of every veteran who had trusted him to tell their stories. And Jake Carter was ready to fight. Jake sat alone in the dim glow of his laptop screen, the weight of Lisa's revelations pressing down like a stone in his chest. The Veterans Network, a name he'd never heard until now, loomed over his life like a shadow, cold and implacable. A conglomerate so vast and well-funded it had quietly swept across Streamflix's veteran content with the precision of a corporate predator, snapping up rights, silencing independent voices. His channel, his stories, his audience, They were all collateral damage in a ruthless strategy to monopolize the narrative. Lisa's voice had trembled over the phone, a mixture of fear and reluctant defiance. "Richard Hammond, he's ruthless. He doesn't want messy truths or raw pain broadcast to millions. To him, veterans are a brand to be polished and packaged, not a community to be heard." The CEO's name echoed in Jake's mind like a verdict. Hammond wasn't just a businessman. He was a gatekeeper with a sanitized agenda, determined to replace the messy, complicated reality of war and recovery with a glossy, marketable illusion. Jake's anger roiled beneath the surface, hotter and darker than before. This wasn't censorship. It was manipulation. Every story that questioned the official narrative, every account that exposed discomfort, every voice that demanded authenticity threatened Hammond's carefully crafted empire. Jake's own channel, unfiltered and unapologetic, was a direct threat to that control. By erasing Jake's presence, the Veterans Network had sent a brutal message: conformity or silence. He ran his hands over his face, the sting of betrayal sharp and biting. Veterans weren't commodities. They were men and women with scars unseen, stories that didn't fit neatly into corporate boxes. Jake had spoken for them, bled with them, laughed and cried alongside them through every live stream and interview. Now the truth was being traded like a currency, locked behind boardroom doors and shareholder interests. Yet in this darkness, Lisa's courage glimmered like a fragile lifeline. She had risked everything to leak confidential contracts, internal memos, documents proving the extent of the Veterans Network's reach and ruthless intentions. Jake's inbox began to flood with encrypted files, whistleblower reports, and emails that mapped a chilling picture of control and suppression. It was more than just a business deal. It was a calculated power grab designed to suffocate independent voices under layers of legal jargon and corporate dominance. The stakes had escalated. This was no longer just a personal battle to reclaim a streaming channel. It was a confrontation with an insidious force willing to silence anyone who refused to toe the line. Jake's mission sharpened into clarity: expose the Veterans Network's manipulation, restore the voices erased by their contracts, and ignite a movement that refused to accept a polished, hollow narrative in place of real truth. He leaned back, the room still and heavy around him, mind racing with possibilities and risks. Every document Lisa sent was a piece of a puzzle that could unravel the entire operation. But releasing them meant wading into dangerous waters, facing powerful enemies who wielded influence beyond his comprehension. Yet the alternative, silence, was worse. Jake's fingers hovered over the keyboard. The fight ahead was daunting, the path littered with threats and betrayals. But if his stories had taught him anything, it was that silence could never heal wounds. The truth demanded to be heard, no matter the cost. And Jake Carter was ready to speak again, loud and unbroken. The backlash was swift and unrelenting, a tidal wave of indignation that crashed over the digital landscape like a storm unleashed. Jake Carter's suspension had ignited more than just outrage. It sparked a collective fury among veterans, activists, and everyday citizens who recognized the insidious threat cloaked beneath the Veterans Network's corporate veil. Hashtags like #Restore, Jake and #Veterans Voices trended across platforms, drowning out the carefully constructed silence that Streamflix and the conglomerate had tried to enforce. The stories Jake had shared, raw and unfiltered, now became the rallying cry for a movement that refused to be muted. Veteran advocacy groups mobilized rapidly, leveraging political connections and public sentiment to demand accountability. Letters flooded regulatory agencies, calls for antitrust investigations, transparency in digital content rights, and protections against monopolistic control. The pressure mounted beyond the confines of social media. Legal experts and journalists began peeling back layers of corporate opacity, exposing how the Veterans Network had weaponized contracts to smother dissent and commodify personal pain. The narrative shifted. This was no longer just about a single streamer, but about an entire community's right to own their stories. Faced with mounting scrutiny, Streamflix found itself cornered. The platform issued a terse public statement acknowledging errors in content moderation and pledged to restore Jake's account immediately, alongside promises of increased oversight and clearer communication. The hollow corporate platitudes rang thin, but the restoration of Jake's channel was a tangible victory, a crack in the armor of control. Yet for Jake, the win was not just about reclaiming a username, it was about reclaiming a space for truth to breathe. Re-emerging into the digital arena, Jake's presence was electrifying. He returned with a new resolve forged by adversity, no longer just a storyteller, but a leader and a symbol of resistance against sanitized narratives. His streams swelled with viewers. Many veterans who had felt isolated or ignored now saw their experiences reflected in his authenticity. The chat overflowed with testimonies, broken, painful, defiant, each one a rebuke to the sterile, controlled narratives imposed by corporate interests. Jake's platform evolved into a forum for uncensored dialogue, a digital campfire where veterans could share trauma, triumphs, failures, and hopes without fear of censorship. His motivation transformed from personal expression to communal empowerment. He actively encouraged other veterans to claim their voices, to broadcast their realities unfiltered, building a mosaic of experience that no conglomerate could erase or sanitize. The pinnacle of this resurgence came during a landmark live stream, a marathon session packed with veterans from all walks of life, each speaking candidly. Faces filled the screen, voices overlapping in a chorus of resilience and truth. There were tears, laughter, confessions, and calls to action, a raw tapestry woven from the collective strength of those who refused to be silenced. The chat pulsed with solidarity, the virtual room alive with the pulse of shared healing. This wasn't merely a personal victory for Jake Carter. It was a seismic shift in the control of veteran narratives. His fight became a beacon of hope and inspiration, proof that even in the face of calculated oppression, courage and truth could carve a path to justice. The battle was far from over, but the story now belonged to the veterans themselves, no longer a sanitized product to be bought, sold, and silenced. Jake's voice roared back into the digital wilderness, louder and more unbreakable than ever.